In a divorce, decisions about the house are crucial. Today, we'll explore what to do with the house when facing divorce. Hi, I'm Julie. I'm an attorney who takes the drama out of divorce through mediation. Although I am an attorney, I am not your attorney. This video is for educational purposes only. So, what do you do with the house? I have some thoughts. Option number one is to sell the house. I love this option personally because it's clean financially as well as emotionally. Nobody gets to stay in the house and everybody gets their equity. It also creates some unintended consequences. Once we've sold the house, then we have to deal with the realistic, practical nature that interest rates are sky high. It is April of 2024 and interest rates are about 7.4% for a 30-year loan. A lot of my clients have somewhere between a 2.5 to 4.5%, and that, let's just say it's 4%, that 3.5 difference in interest rate would yield up to a $200,000 difference in buying power. So that practical unintended consequence of making it clean to sell the house to get everybody off the title, off the mortgage, as well as get their equity, has the unintended consequence of having a lower buying power out there in the other market. We also can't ignore the fact that selling the house is a burden. And while you're in the middle of a divorce, the last thing you want to do is add another burden onto your plate. So if only one party really wants to participate in the sale, there's nothing we can really do to make the other party participate in the sale. No court order is going to make somebody get the property ready for sale. They can say that they're doing it. It's not like the sheriff's going to show up. So you kind of need to both be on the same page to sell it. So if you are selling it, it's best to be on the same page so that you both can maximize the value. If you're not on the same page, you need to have your little come to Jesus meeting with yourself to realize that it might be you who's doing most of the work so that they can also gain part of the profit. Let's understand equity. Equity is real market value minus loans equals equity value. Real market value. You can usually get that through a Zillow estimate or a comparative market analysis or an appraisal. If you're using a Zillow estimate, make sure you're in a urban or suburban environment. If you have any acreage whatsoever, usually that Zillow estimate is going to not be as accurate as in those other two environments. A comparative market analysis is provided by a licensed real estate broker. It's typically for free, not always, but typically. And essentially, what they do is they use comparables to figure out what they would sell your house for and what it's likely to sell for. An appraisal is the platinum standard. The downside of using an appraisal is it usually takes some time, 3 weeks or more, and it does cost money, anywhere from about $750 to $1,200, depending upon the appraiser. So once you know your real market value, just plug it into the formula. Real market value minus any loans, that's usually your mortgage or your home equity line of credit, equals the amount of equity. Now, typically, we do split the equity 50-50, but we don't have to because in Oregon, we are an equitable state, not a 50-50 state. So if we're not selling the house, let's look at the different options there are to keep the house. First, let's talk about assumable loans. An assumable loan means that if you have a loan that's assumable and you, as the buyer, qualify for those terms of the loan, then you can assume the loan. That means you get that loan's exact interest rate, monthly payment, principal balance, whole deal. You just have to qualify for the loan on your own. Usually, this is a very good option in divorces when both parties are on the loan and one party makes enough money to qualify for the loan themselves. It's a great option because it's usually about $1,500 to $2,000 as opposed to the $8,000 or more for a refinance at a higher rate. There are basically 3 different ways to get an equity payment to the other party if you're going to keep the house. You can refinance, you can take out a HELOC, or you could do a balloon payment. Let's talk about each in turn. A refinance process is great because it's fairly quick, much quicker than an assumption process. It will cost you money, usually about $8,000 or so. Some are going to be slightly less, some are going to be slightly more. It will get both your names off the loan. The problem is that the interest rates are really sky high right now. So what you were paying, maybe a $2,400 monthly payment, you're probably going to pay a $2,700 month payment. The great part about a refinance, though, is not only are you going to take somebody's name off the loan, but you're going to be able to get them their equity payment as well. So now our original payment was, let's say, 24, it's now 27, and then whatever the equity payment is on top of it, wrapped into one loan is usually easier for somebody to handle on that monthly basis than tacking on a second loan. So let's talk about that. Tacking on a second loan. That's a home equity line of credit. If you assume the loan, then you have to still find a way to get equity to the other party. And so you tack on a second loan, home equity line of credit, so that you can afford it. So the home equity line of credit is essentially a second loan that you tack on top of the original loan. Most of the time, people are going to use this when they have assumed the original loan and they still have to get equity out to that other party. Advantage is you can make a small payment. Usually it's about 1% of the balance. Disadvantage, you're going to be paying interest forever and not be paying towards the principal. So it's a short-term gain, long-term loss scenario. A balloon payment is also another option. That would mean, let's say you owe $200,000 of equity to your spouse, that you wouldn't pay that $200,000 for XYZ period of time. I've had people do 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. I've even had a few couples do 10 years. I hate all those ideas. I think money in hand is better than a promise of money in the future. If we do a balloon payment, we'd want to talk about whether interest is or is not attached, and we'd want to talk about other events that happen. For me and my clients, I always recommend putting a trust deed as well as a promissory note that's attached to that so that we can protect my clients. So now that we know different ways to sell the home, keep the home, pay out the equity, the real question is, what if we both want the home? Who gets possession of the home? That really is up to negotiation or financial circumstances. You're very likely not going to be awarded the home if you can't afford it. And you probably don't want to be putting yourself into that situation. So, as painful as it is in your divorce, you need to be doing some back of the envelope budget type of scenario so you can decide if you can afford it. So, can you afford the mortgage payment? Can you afford the equity payout of the HELOC or the balloon, whatever that is? Be realistic and decide who can keep it. Let's presume for our argument, everything's the same. You both can afford it, you both want it, you both can handle the maintenance, whole shebang. Then it's kind of up to possession at that point. So this is really the one time when people say, don't leave the house, you won't get the house. For the most part, that is wrong. But this is the one time where it is accurate. Whoever is in the house, if you both want the house and all other circumstances are the same, the person who is in the house is probably going to be awarded the house if it's down to the court. Finally, let's cover the misconceptions some people have when they're in the early stages of divorce. If your spouse says, yes, you can keep the house, they don't necessarily mean you get to keep the equity in the home too. And so if you hear your spouse say that, you need to check in with what that expectation is. Do you just mean possession or do you mean possession and all the equity? For the most part, this is a very common misunderstanding that comes to my office, and we have to usually deal with that on the first session. So possession doesn't necessarily mean equity. And if you are taking possession, then we have to figure out what that equity buyout is and what you both feel is fair. If you have any other questions, I strongly encourage you to talk to an attorney. If you would like to book a consult with me, that information's in the link in bio below. Thanks.